Hi, welcome to Politics for People Who Hate Politics, episode 11 or so. I'm Lucy Steigerwald for this and for Liberty.me. And yeah, we're getting ready for an exciting panel show with some new guests who have been haranguing to be my guests for what feels like months or years now. First and least important, we have Joe, my brother. He's all right. Say hi, Joe. Here. Yeah, we know you love it so much. We also have Andrew Carell, whose lower third went away because he's incompetent, but he's also the editor-in-chief of Mediaite, and his hatred for everything and everyone warms my heart on at least a weekly basis. So thanks for coming, Andrew.
It's an honor to commiserate in our hatred of everything.
So glad. And we also have Anthony Fisher, who is a producer for Reason TV, and he wrote and produced the movie Sidewalk Traffic kind of recently. And I used to work with him, and that was fun.
That was fun. Those were good times.
Yeah, for possibly the first time. I wonder if I've ever had a panel where I met everyone. No, you know what, I have, because I've met Joe and Corey and Michelle, so that's a total lie. But often I don't have people I know in real life, and I like all these people. So we are going to start with, I'm going to talk to Anthony for a couple minutes, and then y'all can chime in a little bit after that, about his Reason TV piece this week. It was a big little documentary thing about a disturbing DEA situation down in a little Texas town called Alpine. And as I tweeted halfway through it, I did yell out, "What the fuck?" without prompting or audience. So, Anthony, tell the good people about your story and why it's disturbing.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and I'm glad to have given you a "what the fuck" moment, because that was the desired intention for anyone watching this. There's also a companion article to it where there's about 60% more what the fuck moments that could not be contained in a 10-minute documentary. But basically, I used to be a producer on the Fox Business show The Independents, and I first came across this story then because it had made national news when Will Wheaton posted a strange bond document on his Tumblr that demanded that a woman basically incriminate herself and recant statements saying that the DEA had abused her sister during a raid gone wrong in her tiny Texas smoke shop. And I started making phone calls, and every time I made a phone call, the story got crazier and crazier. And now that I'm back with Reason, I'm able to do some deeper investigative reporting. And I went down to Texas, and basically the story starts with a 2014 DEA raid that was part of the Obama administration's Project Synergy Phase 2, where they were looking for people selling synthetic drugs who would then funnel them to Middle Eastern terrorist groups. But this didn't really fit the profile. This was a young Jewish woman this town has about 5,000 people in it. About half of them are cops, either federally or locally or in training, and everybody knows everybody, and this store had been raided 3 times before in the previous 2 years, so there really was no reason for a militarized raid on it. The raid went wrong. There was, like I said, her sister was allegedly hit by a DEA agent with the butt of a rifle. The DEA claims that unprovoked, this 90-pound woman kicked a large male body-armored automatic weapon-holding DEA agent. They raided a neighboring house without a warrant. After the raid was over, they intimidated a local journalist, basically out of her job. But before that, they got the ownership of the paper she wrote for to write a follow-up story that could have been essentially written by the district attorney's office, and put her byline on it. Yeah, I mean,
that is a lapdog press.
Yeah, it's a shame, because there are a couple of really good reporters down there that were trying to do just honest reporting, where they actually did give maybe not equal time, but they definitely gave a voice to law enforcement, and they took a skeptical glance at everyone involved. And so basically the holy shit punchline of this story is that there's a good reason to suspect that all of this may stem from a previous sexual relationship between the woman who owns the store and the man who is now the district attorney. When she first came to town, it was about 11 years ago as a 18-year-old college freshman, and she got introduced to this older lawyer who gave her a job and then seduced her. She blew him off. He kind of acted questionably after that for a while, and then 10 years later he's the district attorney, and suddenly she's indicted, and suddenly the DEA is kicking in her door, and it's you can't say that it's a direct causation, but it definitely is enough to bring up a motive, and you could definitely say that it's hard to say what is worse, the crime or the cover-up, but there was a tremendous panicking cover-up by law enforcement, especially this district attorney, and that's a decent blow-by-blow of what you can see in my documentary and in my article.
So what's the status of things now with the woman? I mean, in terms of where does she stand now with being in legal trouble?
Well, the federal charges were dropped without prejudice because they didn't find a single thing, not even a chemical analog of a controlled substance, which is a big part of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that there are things that are not banned controlled substances that can be called analogs of banned controlled substances, depending on whether or not the person in law enforcement decides that day that they are similar enough to a controlled substance? So that is I
did not know that.
Yeah, that's a big holy shit moment. So the federal charges were dropped entirely. The charges against her sister were dropped. She had to plead guilty to one charge of possession of controlled substance relating to these analogs from a previous raid. Again, these are not substances that were banned in the state of Texas at the time they were seized. It's a deferred adjudication, meaning there is no guilty verdict, even though she pled guilty. She is not a felon. She has not been convicted of anything. But the deferred adjudication means she gets to leave town. She completes a probationary period, and the whole thing just goes away. But the district attorney reacted strongly to this piece, as you might imagine, and in a statement written on his own office's letterhead, repeatedly called her a felon, and didn't even get the basic facts of the case he was prosecuting right. So he's in a snit, and she actually just left town. She moved back to Houston after spending 11 years in Alpine.
Yeah, that sounds like the kind of town to leave after all of that bullshit.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be visiting again soon. There were some great people, but I imagine there might be checkpoints.
The synthetic thing interests me because, I mean, in classic government fashion, like weed. I guess it's supposed to be a replacement for weed. Weed was banned, and so a worse, more unpredictable substance that is more chemical was invented. That occasionally, apparently causes people to flip their shit and go crazy in a way that only happens with weed if we're talking reefer madness.
I mean, people have been smoking banana peels for when you run out of weed and you can't scrape any last drop of resin out of your pipe. Like, people do stupid things like smoke banana peels. I'm proud to say that I didn't, but friends of mine in my own house tried it, and I was like, that smells awful. You're gonna throw up, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, like you said, prohibition has led to people experimenting with altering their state with more unpredictable, possibly more toxic stuff. But the idea that you could be charged with a felony for possessing a substance that you've spent thousands of dollars to get tested to make sure doesn't contain any banned substances is pretty chilling. Subjective law enforcement.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of my, I know Carell and Joe can start chiming in. Y'all didn't need to be so quiet. The thing about your story that freaked me out was this kind of not just the raid, because God knows I'm trying to be what I am about raids and stuff, but it was the impeding on the speech and the basically pressuring all these criticisms to go away, like the guy who took the photos. Your photos don't show what you took photos of. I mean, there's just...
Yeah, the district attorney told the guy to take the photos off of Facebook because they were misleading photographs of the aftermath of the raid. But the photographs were misleading. And that's the thing. Like, to me, like, I try not to be an obnoxious, elitist, urbane, East Coast, jerk, but I couldn't imagine in this day and age, in the internet age, that even in a small town, that the intimacy of everybody knowing your business and the power of just a handful of people in charge to intimidate everybody, including the press, I didn't believe was possible, but it's very possible. And like I said, it doesn't reflect on everybody in that town. It's actually a really beautiful town in the foothills of the Davis Mountains. But yeah, scary stuff. Scary stuff.
Well, it was a good piece. You should be depressed and proud of the work you did.
I try to be a little of both every day.
Now, I have a question.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
About time.
It says that if she violates any terms of probation, she can get 5 to life. I mean, could that just be like anything? Like what all does her probation entail?
I mean, she's not allowed to drink alcohol. She's not allowed to.
What does that have to do with anything?
She's not allowed to own weapons, which is a big deal in Texas. Especially, I mean, primarily because she is a rancher and owns horses and chickens and stuff like that, and there are predators out there which people shoot off, off of their property. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of petty bullshit that she has to follow. Certainly she can't, get into any major, I mean, she might be able to get a traffic ticket, but certainly, not a DUI or anything like that.
So yeah, so it's basically her whole life is, ruined. She can't. I mean, it would be hard to be a rancher, I would assume, with no access to firearms and, So basically, the cops just come in, ruin her life.
She's not a felon, but she can't have a gun for some reason.
Yeah.
Which, that still doesn't make any sense to me.
Strangely
if
personal.
She's not a felon. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not strangely personal because But I like the analog. I don't like the analog thing. I think that's fascinating. It's almost like it's like the obscenity laws kind of thing. It's like somebody saying, "I know when I see it, and I know an illegal substance when I see it." And that's sort of a. I mean, this is a local thing, right? Or this is a local DEA, the analog thing, or is that like the federal law allows that?
No, I mean it's the analog law. It was passed in 1986, and that's my point here. Is that I'm saying that I do believe that this law could be abused by somebody with a vendetta, and I believe it has been in this case. I believe
it could be.
Yeah,
theoretically.
It's a federal law, but it can be applied locally.
That's the magic of the DEA for you.
Can't wait for that to be applied federally. That'll be.
Well, yeah, the synthetic crackdown. I mean, I just if you don't, none of this makes sense. I mean,
well, here's the thing. Here's like I this might not have gotten through, but I really want to drive home the point that the Obama administration's DEA were witless chumps and pawns in one small town district attorney's personal vendetta. The DEA was in charge of this raid as part of the Day of Raids, but I surmise that the primary reason that they raided this store is, I mean, first of all, the DEA can get a federal warrant anytime they want. They came in with a Brewster County warrant that was ordered by the district attorney, which is, from what I understand, a very rare thing. And again, if you've got a day of raids, if you're raiding 200 places around the country, why can't you get your own warrant? Why can't you, So right. The district attorney was so desperate to find more samples to test to prove that she was guilty that he had even, like I even mentioned in the piece, he had been turned down by his own county court board of commissioners for thousands of more dollars in lab tests, and so he was like, what can I do? Oh, the DEA's doing this raid. Hey, I know a place you can hit locally, and the DEA was all too happy to go along with it.
Yeah, calling them chumps and patsies certainly lets them off a little too easy, because I'm sure they were champing at the bit for more fun. But that is an interesting chain of events and like chain of law enforcement that it was. Yeah, everyone go look at the story.
Yes, be sure to Google sex, spice, and small town Texas justice. We need eyeballs on that, please.
We're gonna let you. Okay, we're gonna put the link up, and the end of the podcast is all about promoting yourself. But we're gonna move on. I'm gonna try to be decisive, as Joe always tells me to be, and I like to do what Joe says. Wait a minute. We can talk about Rand Paul next, or we can talk about how the kids today love the socialism.
Decisive. Quick one.
Yeah, let's
also get my lower third working. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I don't know where it went. You had it and it was gone.
Whatever.
All right, so Reason Group, keeping our reason-y theme right now. They did a big poll, and I didn't get a chance to look in depth, but I did note that 43% of millennials, or rather 18 to 29-year-olds, so sort of at the older end of millennials, had a positive impression of socialism. And what was it? Emily Eatkins. I wrote down a quote. The closer you get in, my handwriting is horrible. The older you get, the more you hate socialism, basically. So younger people who are adult and I suppose ostensibly politically aware, they don't have the bad impression of socialism that we might wish. There was also something about how they had a more positive impression of socialism than of a, God almighty, I should write these things down. And basically, like, not a planned economy, but a similar but more banal-sounding thing, because obviously we have a mixed economy in the United States. So, like, the socialism, the kids, and the socialism.
It reminds me. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's how I ask questions.
That's your cue.
Oh,
yeah.
That's your. That when I read the poll, it reminded me of in college there was a friend of mine who is I don't know what major he was. It was something where you'd expect him to be a little smarter. It wasn't, communications. Sorry to anybody who's communications, but
right here. I'm right here, Andrew.
Well, that's why you're you. No. And he said to me something along the lines of, this is a really offhanded comment he made, but he said something along the lines of, I share my weed with everybody. I'm a socialist. And that's
me is clearly what that is, yeah.
Right, like there's a fundamental misunderstanding on the difference between that and use of government force. And like, so you're just saying you're a generous guy, really, is what you're saying. But I think that is sort of representative of how a lot of people who don't really remember maybe the wall falling, don't remember the Cold War. I mean, I grew up with a negative connotation of socialism because I was reading Hayek when I was like 15, but most people are not going to know that. And I do think that, there might be something about kids these days, but I think it's the same old adage that, you're a socialist until the government takes your paycheck.
Well, that's the thing. They don't even they misunderstand. They completely misunderstand what socialism is. They say, yeah, we want more government programs and we want less income inequality. But when asked, okay, do you think the government should be running Apple? They go, no, of course not. That's ridiculous. But they don't understand that there are no private companies in socialism.
So,
it's like the rampant misuse of the word fascist too. There's a lot of that going on. Yeah, that's a whole.
I mean, there's some flexible meanings. I mean, there's like what Marx thought about X, Y, and Z, and there's what Sheldon Richman thinks about X, Y, and Z. And
right. Luckily, Marxism is not a colloquial term we're using. Like, oh, that's so Marxist, man.
Oh, bro, it's so Marxist.
I'm sure with everybody. I'm a Marxist.
I find the socialism and generosity to be deeply now I don't remember the fall of the Berlin Wall either. I wish I did. I was 2 at the time, and like I watched footage of it. I'm just like, like I can't be cynical about that at all. And like
I'm actually old enough to remember Tiananmen Square and the Berlin Wall, and I think I mean I'm 35 now, so I was 10 when both of those things happened, and very few people even my age like talk about it, consider it a major moment. Like it's kind of just like the Cold War was like a bunch of John le Carre novels, and so and it just it happened and then it just went away and that was it. There's very little reflection on that.
Well, I think what we need is like another East Germany kind of. I mean, North Korea, it's kind of far out there. Cuba's kind of out of the mainstream eye. We need like an actual country dealing with socialism for, some of these college kids, I'm at the end of the millennial spectrum. and you don't see socialism related to in a bad way, kind of in an everyday sense anymore.
Yeah,
Even if you get to college.
Is college the problem? Like, it's got to be part of the problem.
I had a bunch of socialist professors in college, and I was political science, so there's a lot of. I mean, even if it's not positive about socialism so much, it's so much negativity about capitalism and kind of free enterprise now. I think that definitely doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, Joe and I, our father endearingly called us commies growing up, but like it wasn't not in like a Marxist, like an insulting but endearing type of thing.
It was cute when he did it. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like referencing to the fact that you're not. I was called when I worked for Stossel. The whole Stossel team called me a commie libertarian because I'm very socially liberal, I guess. I don't know how that makes any sense. But yeah, there's this sort of connotation.
It really doesn't.
That sort of fits in with this. Is like there's this idea that being slightly left on something makes you socialist in it or a communist. It's like, well, no.
Well, the whole point of libertarianism literally is that you're left and right.
Right.
You're non-conflicting with itself bullshit version of things.
Right.
Not to toot our ideological horn, but also to do so. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole big thing there with like, Anthony's boss, Gillespie and Welsh and all those people. Their whole it's a libertarian moment type thing, which I always, like, bless their hearts, I always thought was a little optimistic. But like they often base it on these kinds of reason group polls, and Anthony was saying like there's no aversion to the word itself, socialism, but if you get down to more specific questions, there is more of a reason for optimism, like, no, I don't want to nationalize Apple. I mean, that's either like a reason to be positive, or it's just like part of the epic cluelessness of, people I know who I like, but they're idiots, people who are writing on their Tumblrs about how they hate capitalism, like there's like a total cluelessness about anything until, I don't know.
Well,
I can't decide about the optimism.
There's some nuance in there in the sense that like maybe hating the concept of capitalism, and because they may conflate it with crony capitalism, that's maybe not such a terrible thing. Like that's why there's some overlap between. That's giving them way too much credit, I know, but I'm saying that's like that's sort of it's like it's an in for us as the sort of annoying missionaries. Like, have you read Hayek before? And like we can be like, well, did you know that capitalism isn't actually capitalism? Like that's the in for us. That's sort of how I approach it. Is capitalism may be an evil in the sense that capitalism, as we know it, is state capitalism, and that's something that maybe is not such a great thing. But then you say to these people, they don't like capitalism, but they want Apple to have its own autonomy. That's like, yeah, exactly. That's what capitalism should be. Is there shouldn't be no sort of, almost intimate relationship between government and business, but these businesses should be able to do what they want and create the sort of progress that you want. A lot of these people oppose SOPA, so they're on the right track. It's just they don't quite.
Well, I generally try to make my selling point is. Because I'll probably get kicked out of most libertarian salons for saying that I do actually think there's a place for public roads and some public works, and yeah, I know. Did you already cut off my So I generally sell capitalism, or at least free market economics, to self-avowed socialists or communists, by saying, yeah, your government cheese is a very nice, you can feel good about yourself that you give government cheese. But what would be great is if you took stupid, pointless, protectionist barriers to entry to either employment or opening a business away to let people who might be financially disadvantaged make their own way and compete and work for something and make a profit and make more money than they're going to make on the dole. And it's like, I'm not saying get rid of all of the social safety net. I think the social safety net would be stronger and more robust if a lot of the protectionisms that keep poor people from gaining an entry to business were removed. And then they go, yeah, but that's no, man. Like, Uber, fuck Uber, man.
Yeah, the new Uber hatred is fascinating. I was waiting for them to all be touting like the Ebola guy took an Uber. Ergo, like it's all Uber's fault.
Yeah, and that speaking of the just real quick, since we're so topical, I don't the new thing now. This in the 24 hours since Dr. Spencer tested positive for Ebola, they're now tracing his path in the day that he first got a fever. As if like, what the hell is that going to do? Like, unless you know everybody who took that path too, like everybody that was on the High Line, everybody that was on the L train, everybody that took that Uber, like. It's I guess it's just we're down to like infection porn phase.
A bit, yeah. Don't lick anything on your travels though. I'm a little worried about you New Yorkers. Don't lick anything. Unless...
Yeah, that was fantastic. That thing that I think that was on Mediaite, right, Andrew? The guy in New York One saying, if you find feces, don't eat it.
He's like it's the simplest advice I can give is if you find strange mucus or poop on the street, just don't eat it. It's like
That's a good New York City thing in general. I mean, that's solid.
That's fine in theory, but.
I mean, some people like to toss salad, and you don't know what the possibilities are there. But
no, dude, this is a family show. It's not. Don't worry.
Nobody knows what that means.
Well, yeah.
Anyway,
do you want to talk about Rand Paul? How about Rand Paul?
Yeah, I mean, the kids today. Oh, I was going to say one more thing, even though I could have let you steal the segue there. But
for a comedic.
Andrew, whatever the hell your name is, Andrew Carell, that's the one. Your mention of cronyism and stuff. I've noticed that I've met a lot of left libertarians lately, and like you're not one. They're more left. They feel like they're part of the left. And,
yeah, no, I don't identify as that.
Yeah, I don't either, even though I've been accused of such. But
I'm
even
a Ridley libertarian.
Even they admit that, like, okay, if what we have is state capitalism, we've been freer. We have, the laptops in which we are now using to converse. State capitalism is clearly better than state socialism or communism or fascism, obviously. So, like, if the world was as like nice as Republicans think it is, and if the market was purely free and magical, it would be a lot easier to convince people of this. We have to be all like, well, the market's not free exactly, but it's kind of free, and that's kind of why you have this sweet phone that you like and stuff.
The problem, though, that I have a problem with a lot of people in our sort of small world libertarian camp is like this sort of fetishization of, well, just free the markets. And I agree that's the prescription for most things. It's just what we don't really convey when we say that is that there will still be problems. Like people will still suffer. It's just more optimal. But I think that is sort of the thing that frustrates me a lot about Republicans when they talk economics is they talk a lot about freeing the markets and free enterprise and this worship of business, and they do it in this way.
They also imply that we have a free market already, like entirely.
But they also imply that it's magic and it'll just fix everything. But it's not. That's not what we think. We think it is a better alternative, and it is more just. People who suffer. If there are people who are not as successful, that's more just outcome. And also, we recognize that there's no perfect system. Like that's a problem I think with Republicans when they talk about this. They talk about it in such a magic way that it makes any talk of free markets make you look like a fool now. Where if you say free markets in public, people think, well, you're just like a, as Jeffrey Sachs called it, a market fundamentalist. Like you believe in this religious hand or something. Like the markets are a religion almost. And
I think that there's a lot of straw manning from liberals about the way libertarians talk about it. But it's true that sophistication and nuance is sometimes lacking.
Basically, I'm saying the mainstream right makes us look bad because they don't know how to talk about markets.
They always do, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, they also make us, whoever us are, look bad by not practicing.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, but not practicing any of this when they're in office. I mean, like, is there, are there really any Republican heroes out there in Congress who, vote against, pork barrel projects in their districts? So other than Ron Paul's retired now, and even he wasn't perfect.
Amash
wasn't even perfect. Amash is very good, but he's not perfect either. He's probably your best example.
They have a job.
There's 300 more Republicans in Congress besides Amash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a decent enough segue to get to our next. Thank you for that, Anthony. To
Not
our
the one
next
before,
question.
that wasn't decent. No.
What now?
Nothing. Go ahead.
What are you sassing me, Corral? Are you sassing me?
You need an ombudsman on this show, I think. We need to bring that back. Yeah.
I'm trying to get Joe to do that, but he's too lazy. Yeah. Or my other friends that seem to have wandered off, never to return to this podcast.
They were
It's
terrible.
fine. I'm over it. They're bad people. I despise them. Okay, lost the segue there. Speaking of Republicans in Congress who are mixed but kind of libertarian, Rand Paul, a couple days ago, did what is being touted as his big deal foreign policy speech. And some Vox dude thinks it's a really big deal. And Connor Friedorf kind of thought, check out the speech at all. And do you have any thoughts? I can kind of fill you in if you missed it.
About
Are we
talking about the actual speech, the words of the speech?
Well, I mean,
What it means for America? I mean,
what does it mean for America, Joe? What do they for America?
I mean, he seems to be basically laying out his plan that. I mean, he kind of uses the normal wishy-washy kind of words where, it's war is necessary when America is attacked or threatened, when vital American interests are attacked and threatened, and we've exhausted all other measures short of war. That's an actual quote. So what does that really mean? It sounds good, and
the big thing is he said he's talking bringing Congress back, and that's pretty revolutionary at this point.
That's horrible. That is a big deal. But yeah.
No, but it is. I mean, you're right that it's horrible, but let's be honest about it. It's a fucking big deal. We haven't declared war since World War II, and we've been at war since World War II, and this is a popular leading potential Republican candidate who's saying we won't do this unless we go to Congress. Now, to be fair, the current Nobel Peace Prize winner in chief said the same thing and then didn't do it.
Yep.
But it was less controversial for him to do that in the Democratic primary than for Rand Paul to do it in a Republican primary.
Yeah, I mean, the Obama thing is exactly what I worry about. Usually when I'm excited about any politician doing anything to provoke any type of optimism about politicians, I either think Obama, I don't want to be those idiots I saw in 2008, literally chanting his name in the streets.
No, I doubt you would. But we all had reason to expect he wouldn't be as terrible as he's been. Let's be honest.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. But the level of optimism about a politician is fundamentally bad. But at the same time, libertarians always shoot themselves in the foot and are overly purist. But at the same fucking time, Ronald Reagan, is still talked of, including by Rand Paul, recently, as some sort of libertarian, and for the drug war alone, dude, to hell with Reagan. He was not. He read the Freeman on an airplane once, and someone took a picture of him. That's all.
Yeah, and that ghost is still there in the sense that Grover Norquist saw. I think he was at the New York speech, the speech that everybody's been hyping up, and Grover Norquist saw the speech, and he sort of channeled John Landau when he first saw Bruce Springsteen, and in saying, "I've seen the future of rock and roll, and it's Bruce Springsteen." And in this case, Grover Norquist actually said to the press that he's seen the new Reagan, or I forget the exact quote. We wrote it up on media. It was, "I've seen the new Reagan, and that guy is Rand Paul." And in a sense, maybe that's maybe he doesn't mean it literally. Maybe he means it in the sense of somebody who can galvanize the Republican Party to actually get its shit together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it at all. I mean, Reagan was like Bill Clinton, a master campaigner, more than more than there was ever any substance in either of their presidencies. It was all about an image that made people feel good. They'd also, the people that hated them, viscerally hated them. But Reagan was inscrutable even to his family and his closest friends. And Rand Paul is prone to clumsy mistakes, short temper. And it remains to be seen what a national candidate he'll be. He can't run to us and win the presidency or even the Republican nomination. He needs to find his inner warmth or something that connects generally with people. I don't know that he can do it. I think it's going to be some schmuck like Huckabee who walks in with a sweater.
Oh, that.
No, but I think when it comes down to it.
That's what the GOP
How can
wants.
be such a
That's
huggable
what they've
fascist?
proven to be
Like,
wanting.
Rand Paul has the potential to make some waves, and I hope he runs, and I hope it's a bloody knockdown, fucking scorched earth battle.
Mm.
But I just don't see it. I don't see him going the distance without seriously fucking himself up. And let's not make light of the Confederate groupies that he have been in his employ. Like this kind of shit will matter on a national stage.
There's that, and then there's also the fact that it's, I've been saying this a lot, it's like, even if I wanted to be a Rand Paul optimist, I'm sure Justin Raimondo would kill me for saying I'm a Rand Paul pessimist, but...
there's always a reason for Justin to be about things fine.
I'm pessimistic in the sense that and not even just because I disagree with Rand on some things, and I think his message is a little, in terms of like, 8th grade me talking about punk rock, I'd be like, he sold out. But, but Rand Paul, for me, I think what's going to happen if he were to ever get the nomination of the Republican Party is really obvious to me, is the right will eat him alive, and the left, not even if he gets the nomination, before he ever gets the nomination, the right will eat him alive during the debates, because there is a mood on the right, I think, for interventionism. Although it seems like there isn't, like there's been this sort of wave because Obama's president, there really is this creeping sort of, I wouldn't call it neoconservatism, it's just this general idea we got to go get them. And also because there's people like Bill Kristol who are scaremongering about him being the end of Western civilization in some sense. And
Bill Kristol's the fucking end of Western civilization, is what.
Yes. But then, as soon as the left detects that he may have a chance at this, they're going to eat him alive too. I mean, they love him right now, and there's a lot of like, so lack of a better word, there's synergy right now. I mean, there's Eric Holder praising Rand Paul. There's he's citing the New Jim Crow, that awesome book about how the drug war is basically the new Jim Crow. He's citing that book during his speeches, and he's speaking at Howard University, and he's going to Ferguson and doing meet and greets with local leaders, which nobody else has done. I don't think even the president came and did that. Nobody else from no possible Democratic contender has done that. No possible Republican contender has done that. So he's doing all this outreach, but it's going to backfire, I think, because once the left detects that he is a possibility to defeat whoever their nominee is, whether it's Clinton, Cuomo, Warren, or whoever, or that he's somebody that will go up against him, the machine will churn and they will turn on him, and then you'll see a rehashing of the Rachel Maddow interview, and you'll see questions about how he's reacting to this Ebola stuff. I mean, that's not major enough, but like, there's a general sort of tone, as Anthony was hinting at with Rand, where he has this tendency to just speak off the cuff in the same way that his father does, that is sometimes counterproductive.
So practically,
John McCain has already hinted that he would prefer President Hillary Clinton to President Rand Paul.
I remember this, yes.
And Joan Walsh, I even got into it with her on Twitter because she was snarking about Rand Paul's the statement that he made. He was in Central America when Ferguson was blowing up, and he was like the first national figure to make a really forceful statement about police militarization. And Joan Walsh was snarking about it on Twitter, and I was like, hey, can you time out? How about like a moment, where a popular, nationally known Republican senator is making a statement against police militarization in the post 9/11 world? How about like just one moment where you can say that that's a good thing? And to her credit, she was very candid. She said, I do give him credit for that, but that's why he scares me more than any other Republican politician. Like, the salon world already like, he is the target is on him right now. Even if like he's kissy face with Eric Holder, like they do actually see. I don't see Rand Paul like whipping up the crazy college kids the way Ron did, but they at the same time Ron was never credible
about it. It's not the enthusiasm isn't there, but there's an element of that.
If he comes out for decriminalizing or legalizing weed, I think he'll secure the college vote, but a little bit better. The first national politician to do that would be huge. But
and I forget that he hasn't actually done that, but
he kind of did. He hinted that he's in favor of decriminalizing, but it's
Well, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like the goodness, the pragmatic reasons or the practical reasons for pessimism are one thing, but I'm not getting a lot of ideological pessimism because you guys, I guess, are more sensible than that.
Yeah, I disagree with them on a lot of stuff, but I think, as a person who is this is the first time where I actually feel like a guy who represents my views in like the smallest amount is going to get more than like one caucus vote in Maine, which is what Ron Paul got last in 2012. I think he got the Maine primary or something. Like this could be actually big. But I really genuinely believe, and I know he's a clown, but I genuinely believe that like Ben Carson is more what the Republican base truly wants. If you go on Twitter and just talk to, I know this is, it's not fair to base Republicans off Twitter, but you go on Twitter and talk to a lot of like conservative writers who are in this business of sort of churning out the machine of who's the conservative du jour, and they really do like people like Ben Carson, and it's kind of baffling. It's just, I really don't. I think that they will. I honestly believe they will eat Rand Paul alive because they'd prefer somebody like Ted Cruz, who's a total opportunist.
Well, I mean, we're getting very, very close to. I mean, right after the midterms is when this shit's going to get real, and depending, like, I mean, remember how? I mean, the Republicans already said that they're not going to allow what happened last time. They're not going to allow 13 months of debates, even though that was awesome. All right, that was like I watched almost every single one. You and Lucy, you and I even stayed up drinking. Yeah, I mean, but it was I remember at the Reason D.C. office watching one of those early Republican debates with like 10 candidates, and it was just a total fiasco. But still, you had great moments where like Ron Paul calls Rick Santorum a phony to his face, Romney, like when given one word to describe himself, says resolute. Like, you got to see like the id of all these Republican would-be presidential candidates, and like to contrast like the just bullshit of a the RNC and the DNC, when you got these like bloody-nosed free-for-all debates with 10 candidates on them, you have like 6 or 7 of them, that's when you actually really do get to see the soul of the party. And it's that very reason they're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
There is no soul.
Well, like Ron Paul did change. He changed the debates in that he made people remember like the Fed is a thing, and they should probably robotically form the words that say they were maybe against it or for auditing it. And there was even like an occasional sprinkling of like foreign policy nuance, maybe. Yeah. But then in the Rand Paul's drone filibuster, you had all of those, barnacles clinging to him, Ted Cruz, and even more like transparently just fraudulent Marco Rubio coming down like a robot. Yeah. I am for Rand Paul. This is, yes, me.
He didn't even say he was for the cause. He was just, I support Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to nominate the guy, is what it was. He didn't want to nominate Brennan, I guess it was, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he has a base. That's the problem. I mean, I don't think he'll get far in the primaries.
Well, it's too fractured almost. I mean,
that's what it is. Right.
It's not going to be the voters who are going to actually go vote in these primaries. Those aren't his, if he's going to Ferguson and doing all this kind of, talking to Howard University, that's not something, the Republican base is going to really care about.
Right, grudging respect from liberals, like, I don't see that bringing you to the presidency. Like, oh, he seems okay on a few issues. Well, ready for Hillary.
Right. Well, that's the thing about, yeah, exactly, and that's sort of what Anthony was mentioning Joan Walsh before, is like, that's exactly how I think a lot of them feel, is this sort of tepid enthusiasm that there's a guy like this, but they're also amused, and I think that they're ready on a dime to turn on him and say, it was all disingenuous, he's just a Republican fascist.
Confederacy, Civil Rights Act.
Right, yeah, and that, and, just the fact that he is anti-abortion, and he is... he's been incredibly wishy-washy on gay marriage to the point where it's frustrating because nobody knows exactly what he thinks. That kind of stuff will hurt him, especially now as more and more.
Gay marriage is even going to be an issue. Like, I'm pretty sure like it's over. Even on Michelle Bachmann, who I know is retiring from Congress, literally said, "I'm bored with talking about gay marriage." And
good for her, finally.
And now that we're over 30 some odd states, I think it's kind of over. I don't see it being a campaign issue. It might be red meat that they throw, but it's not going to be an issue.
That's what I mean, is like it'll be red meat in the debates, in the sense where they'll throw it out as like a bellwether for whether you're still a true conservative who believes in values regardless of whether the country has changed, and I think they're still going to cling on to that for one more election cycle, I think.
And he's going to have to target some of those conservative voters, and as soon as he makes that pivot, if he somehow magically gets a nomination, all the things that he said in those debates to
In
all those
Iowa, yeah.
right are immediately going to be like you said, just fodder for the left to just unload on him. But I think that's wishful thinking, even that he'll make it that far.
Yeah, I've never heard him this pessimistic about
Well,
Rand Paul
like
ages. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just saying, I know, we're at the stage where nobody's even declared yet, and, the usual suspects are Cruz, Rubio, Paul Ryan, Christie,
Scott Walker.
Jeb Bush.
Scott Walker, Jeb Bush. Yeah, there are, booby traps for all of those guys, I actually do ultimately think it's going to be Bush and Clinton.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
It's going to be so good in a watch the world burn kind of way if it's
no, it'll be what that is. That's when we all just give up. That's like Soylent Green.
Right. I'll just laugh about everything and just be well, fuck America, we're done.
You say that now.
We're an oligarchy. Woo! Sorry.
That's when we use our Canadian citizenship, Lucy.
Yes, we do.
We can still get out.
That's why I'm moving to Paris.
See you guys in hell. I mean,
can move to Canada, socialist paradise, and guard the war memorial.
Yeah.
Former socialist paradise.
Even our Montana stronghold is technically owned by the federal government, Joe. So we're kind of out of luck there too.
Oh, Alberta, Lucy, Alberta.
All right, that's where we'll go, Joe. Right after this podcast, I'll meet you there.
Freest economy in North America.
just feel lucky that under both of those people that you're living here at least and not living in a country that is majority brown people because you'll likely be bombed under those presidencies. So, not that it's any different now. I don't know why it's any different now, but I've heard rumors that Hillary's not going to run, but
that would be great because people would be so. Oh wait, we need to.
I just do not. Hillary,
her entire life has led up to this. Basically.
Yeah, this is, and she did, and I don't even think she believed she was going to get a second shot. I really don't. I think that that one term as Secretary of State was something that she wasn't expecting, and somebody tipped her off that no, this is your way back in, and you don't have to do. Nobody does it for 2 terms, or unless you're Henry Kissinger. So you got a way out. You got a way to piss on the tent from the outside and say, hey, see, you should have voted for me in 2008 the whole time. I mean, as long as the rumors that Karl Rove seems hell bent on spreading about her aren't true, and her health is good enough to run. There's no fucking way she's not running. All right, she's
You put it with Bill Clinton for 40 years for this.
Hashtag Benghazi.
And the sexism is going to come in, and then the horrible well, it's a lady's turn to
victim
be an authoritarian scumbag hawk.
The best part will be when Saturday Night Live won't be able to find an impressionist to do a Hillary impression, and when they do, it won't work, and they'll say, well, it's just because there's nothing funny about Hillary. There's nothing to make fun of.
Well, but Amy Poehler was good at doing her, but Amy Poehler's not on the cast anymore, so it doesn't matter. But.
It's another tragedy. Amy Poehler's awesome. Well, politics are horrible. I didn't find this a nice non-political topic, so we're just going to do a nice other thing we do, which is where we talk a little bit about the exciting non-political thing we've enjoyed in the past week or so. Joe, share with the class, would you?
Hockey's back, so that's about all I care about for the next 5 months or so.
So just hockey for the next 5 months.
This is Pittsburgh, Andrew, all right? Sorry.
Sure.
Care about sports, and that's all.
Literally hockey.
Literally hockey.
Okay, Anthony, in your damn creaking chair. Hold still, man. What have you enjoyed the past week or so that is not related to politics?
Jesus, can you come back to me?
Jesus is. I'm putting you down for Jesus.
Yeah, I'm going to watch a movie later, which might be the first movie I've watched in weeks. World
Series. But you haven't enjoyed it yet, though.
Yeah, World Series is awesome. I don't know the sports thing. That's about it. I really don't have anything non-political that has happened that's been interesting in the past week. But if anything comes to me, I'll definitely chime in.
Okay, Carell.
You should go. You should give yours, Lucy, and then we'll give ours.
Oh well. I'm trying to think. Well, all I have that comes to mind that's notable is that I wrote a review of a Charlie Parr show like a week or so ago, and then Charlie Parr shared it on his Facebook, and then my blog got lots of traffic, and then I was worried that I insulted him because I described him as really awkward on stage. So it was a roller coaster ride of emotions, but turns out he thought it was really funny, so it was okay.
That actually reminds me. And I don't care about what any of you think. I am excited about the new and final Pink Floyd album that's coming out.
I didn't know there was such a thing as new Pink Floyd albums.
Honestly. Yeah, it's from the sessions that they recorded 20 years ago from their last studio album. Their keyboardist Rick Wright died in 2008, so this was basically their tribute to him. The album is almost entirely instrumental, except for the last song, which has some feeble words on it. But yeah, it's coming out in a couple of weeks, and I'm actually going to buy that on a CD. I'm going to go to the record store. I'm going to find a fucking record store. I'm going to buy it on CD. And I've basically been doing the entire Pink Floyd canon, from 67 to 94. And so that's been great because Pink Floyd was probably the band of my high school experience. That they were already an old band at that point, but I did get to see them live. And I've gotten to see some of their solo stuff since then, and to have one more, hopefully better than nostalgic album will be cool.
You should also know that Roger Waters isn't on the album still. He had to clarify that he's not part of Pink Floyd. So.
And I couldn't be happier about that.
Yeah.
I don't really mock you for Pink Floyd. I just literally like 2 Pink Floyd songs, but I only know like 4 Pink Floyd songs, so I have no mocking. I mean, you're a damn hippie, and Johnny Rod disapproves, but like that's fine.
Because you have terrible taste in music, Lucy.
Yeah. Great.
What's ironic is that
it's awesome. What? Sorry.
The 1977 Brit punks definitely took direct aim at like bands like The Who and Pink Floyd, but for my money, Pink Floyd's 1977 album Animals is like the angriest thing of the 70s. It's angrier than any leather-clad punk shit. It's angry prog rock, vicious. Calls people out by name.
The imagery is more lasting, I would say too. That the pig. I mean, that's sort of...
Oh, the pig, yeah, totally. Everyone
the pig floating over a smokestack, I think that's like a sort of an image that will never go away.
I was like the guys on fire, then.
I guess my past week enjoyment, actually, oddly enough, this isn't my answer, but funny enough, I've been listening to a lot of metal. Not the type of music, but the album. Anthony knows what I mean, the Pink Floyd album, Metal.
Yes.
Which...
with 2 Ds.
Is such a underrated album, and how it's like bizarrely a mix of like 3 different genres, where there's one song where I think Richard Wright wrote it, San Tropez, which is just this like sort of reggae, bizarre, like tropical, I guess I would describe it, tropical song, but then there's amazing songs like Echoes. Lucy, take notes.
I'll do it.
But I mean, yeah, for my money, that's the best album. Like, I mean, to me, that's the most perfect album.
I've talked about this before, but I guess I didn't realize that was your... Oh, well, that might be my favorite, or Wish You Were Here. I don't know which one was my favorite album, but my answer for something that the guy's shaking hands. Mm-hmm. In the past week that I've enjoyed, there's this band called Delta Spirit, and their new album, I've sort of like soured on them in the past couple of years. They're this sort of folk rockish, garage rock, weird, maybe a little bit of the band kind of thing going on, and I've kind of soured on them in the recent years, where I feel like they've become Kings of Leon-ish, where they're like trying to become this big Nashville overproduced sound. And I
never liked Kings of Leon, even though I was supposed to.
I hate them. I despise Kings of Leon. But there's like this, there's this trend among bands like that, Americana, folk rock, garage rock bands,
which I'm all about. But
yeah,
not.
There's this trend where they hook up with a really expensive producer. Cold War Kids is a band that did this. They hook up with an expensive producer, and they sort of churn out this really middling, boring album that sort of sacrifices what they were about, and that's what Delta Spirit did with the album before this. But this new album, Into the Wide, which I was a skeptic of originally, is it's big, it's grand, it has this sort of not early Springsteen, maybe Born in the USA sort of organ churning overtures and lots of layers of instrumentation, but it's a beautiful record. It's clearly a married man writing the songs, because he's married now, so he's no longer bitching about what he used to bitch about when he was a busker in San Diego. A lot of the songs are about nature and being out in the wild, but it's a beautiful record, and I recommend checking it out.
Someday, we're gonna need to have a wanky music nerd talk podcast because you guys are so full of knowledge. Of
I like
things
that more than talking about Bill Kristol. We didn't talk about Bill Kristol.
Carell, what's the name of the podcast? Politics for people who hate politics.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the essence of it all. It's exciting that even though I like talking to you guys because I never see you because you live in that stupid New York City place, we should probably wrap up. We've kept it to like about an hour, so if we wrap up
under an hour for maybe the first time in like
4 months, yeah, definitely. But let's let you guys promote yourselves for the people. Joe, do you have any promotional things to tell?
Well, my band has an album coming out tomorrow, which is fun, and we got to be on the marquee at the Rex Theater with John Hodgman. So
wow,
about that. It's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yay! I'm gonna go to the show tomorrow, and I'm telling the parents to go. So
you'll be there taking photos, and it'll be great.
I've literally never heard my brother's band play, which is super terrible of me.
Oh.
You've been around for 3 years.
No, I know, it's terrible. I just followed you on Twitter, though.
Thank you. Well, that means a lot.
What, by the way, what's your band called, Joe?
I don't like to say it out loud. I hate the name.
It's called Active Pardon.
Everybody hates their band name.
What's
it called?
I know.
Active Pardon.
They chose it before I got there.
It's called Active Pardon. Everyone look it up.
That is terrible, but you do have to promote it, otherwise nobody's going to know that you're playing. And
nothing is as terrible as Benjamin's, and Benjamin has gotten pretty good at music, Joe. But remember his hippie ass name. That's
I know. There's so many bad band names in the world, you know.
Like the Beatles.
Let's remember the worst band name is the Dave Matthews Band.
That's not true at all, but it's still funny.
It's a terrible name. Yeah.
Everybody hates their band name. Mogwai famously named themselves after the gremlin or whatever in the movie, and then they're like, we just don't have time to change it. Who cares? Whatever.
We've gone too far.
I heard that Fall Out Boy hates their name, and I couldn't be happier to hear that.
But the Simpsons. I mean,
Schadenfreude, right?
Yeah, I know it's for the Simpsons, but I like that they hate themselves
for doing that.
Dude, we can do a whole podcast where Joe defends Fall Out Boy.
Now we need bands that like name themselves after books, like bands called like East of Eden and Of Mice and Men. They need to like admit how terrible their ideas were. But
there's a lot. Yeah.
I actually knew a bunch of commies in my high school who called themselves Atlas Shrugged.
Wow. All right, that's a little funny actually. I kind of like
they wore Che Guevara shirts and played in a band called Atlas Shrugged.
All right, this isn't the band section. A man named section. Oh my God. All right, Carell, what are you promote yourself, son?
Go read Mediate, and I'm speaking at the Students for Liberty New York Regional Conference in November. Nice.
I'm speaking of the Pittsburgh one, maybe, hopefully. I'm not listed yet, so I actually don't believe it's happening.
And
that's November 15th, right?
November 15th, yeah. Are you coming?
Go to that, people. What?
You're not coming. Never mind.
Oh, no, I'm going to the Pittsburgh one on the same day.
Oh, they're all, I didn't realize that.
A lot of them are on the same days, yeah. So Liberty's good. Anthony, what about you?
Yeah, you can see the story we were talking about before, Sex, Spice, and Small Town Texas Justice on YouTube or Reason.com. Check out the trailer for my feature film Sidewalk Traffic at sidewalktrafficmovie.com. It's coming to a regional festival near you, hopefully. Stay tuned. But our pretty website and our pretty trailer is up there. And you can see me on Fox News' Red Eye on Monday, November 3rd. I think it's the 3rd. So
you're so legitimate, Anthony. We're not even doing that.
What did I do? What did I do wrong?
I said, you're so legitimate. What are you even doing here? Let's be on Red Eye.
It's because I support roads. Yeah.
It is why. Yeah. Damn you to hell.
Like Gutfeld likes them.
Gutfeld loves roads. Bastard. All right, we got to wrap this shit up. Carell and Anthony and Joe, thank you all for joining me. Audience from the future, thanks for watching. Go look at liberty.me and join it if you have money, because it's pretty cool. All right, see you next time. Bye. Hi, welcome to Politics for People Who Hate Politics, episode 11 or so. I'm Lucy Steigerwald for this and for Liberty.me. And yeah, we're getting ready for an exciting panel show with some new guests who I've been haranguing to be my guests for what feels like months or years now. First and least important, we have Joe, my brother. He's all right. Say hi, Joe. Here. Yeah, we know you love it so much. We also have Andrew Carell, whose lower third went away because he's incompetent, but he's also the editor-in-chief of Mediaite, and his hatred for everything and everyone warms my heart on at least a weekly basis. So thanks for coming, Andrew.
It's an honor to commiserate in our hatred of everything.
So glad. And we also have Anthony Fisher, who is a producer for Reason TV, and he wrote and produced the movie Sidewalk Traffic kind of recently.
50% more what the fuck moments that could not be contained in a 10-minute documentary. But basically, I used to be a producer on the Fox Business show The Independents, and I first came across this story then because it had made national news when Will Wheaton posted a strange bond document on his Tumblr that demanded that a woman basically incriminate herself and recant statements saying that the DEA had abused her sister during a raid gone wrong in her tiny Texas smoke shop. And I started making phone calls, and every time I made a phone call, the story got crazier and crazier. And now that I'm back with Reason, I'm able to do some deeper investigative reporting. And I went down to Texas, and basically the story starts with a 2014 DEA raid that was part of the Obama administration's Project Synergy Phase 2, where they were looking for people selling synthetic drugs who would then funnel them to Middle Eastern terrorist groups. But this didn't really fit the profile. This was a young Jewish woman.
And I used to work with him, and that was fun.
That was fun. Those were good times.
Yeah, for possibly the first time. I wonder if I've ever had a panel where I met everyone. No, you know what, I have, because I've met Joe and Corey and Michelle, so that's a total lie. But often I don't have people I know in real life, and I like all these people. So we are going to start with, I'm going to talk to Anthony for a couple minutes, and then y'all can chime in a little bit after that, about his recent TV piece this week. It was a big little documentary thing about a disturbing DEA situation down in a little Texas town called Alpine. And as I tweeted halfway through it, I did yell out, "What the fuck?" without prompting or audience. So, Anthony, tell the good people about your story and why it's disturbing.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and I'm glad to have given you a what the fuck moment, because that was the desired intention for anyone watching this. There's also a companion article to it where there's about six. Well, it's a shame because there are a couple of really good reporters down there that were trying to do just honest reporting, where they actually did give maybe not equal time, but they definitely gave a voice to law enforcement, and they took a skeptical glance at everyone involved. And so basically the holy shit punchline of this story is that there's a good reason to suspect that all of this may stem from a previous sexual relationship between the woman who owns the store and the man who is now the district attorney. When she first came to town, it was about 11 years ago as a 18-year-old college freshman, and she got introduced to this older lawyer who gave her a job and then seduced her. She blew him off. He kind of acted questionably after that for a while, and then 10 years later he's the district attorney, and suddenly she's indicted, and suddenly the DEA is kicking in her door, and it's you can't say that it's a direct causation, but it definitely is enough to bring up a motive. And this town has about 5,000 people in it. About half of them are cops, either federally or locally or in training, and everybody knows everybody, and this store had been raided 3 times before in the previous 2 years, so there really was no reason for a militarized raid on it. The raid went wrong. There was, like I said, her sister was allegedly hit by a DEA agent with the butt of a rifle. The DEA claims that unprovoked, this 90-pound woman kicked a large male, body-armored, automatic weapon-holding DEA agent. They raided a neighboring house without a warrant. After the raid was over, they intimidated a local journalist, basically out of her job. But before that, they got the ownership of the paper she wrote for to write a follow-up story that could have been essentially written by the district attorney's office, and put her byline on it. Yeah, I mean,
that is a lapdog press.
Yeah,